A chart can look beautiful and still be inaccessible. For example, if this Jealous Fork entertainment chart only uses color to show which social media campaigns performed best, some viewers might not be able to tell those campaigns apart. If the labels are tiny, the numbers may be hard to read, and if the alt text only says something generic like bar chart, a screen reader user will miss the whole point of the data. So in this video, we're going to fix all that. So here's the scenario. Jealous Fork ran 5 spring campaigns: Love Story Launch, Mood Board Monday, Rental Reveal, Venue Glow Up, and RSVP Rescue. The team wants to know which campaign generated the most total engagement across social media. So the first thing we want to do in Venngage is to bring that data wherever that might live. In this case, it's a little spreadsheet. We want to bring that data in here so we can create a chart. So first things first, let's go over to the left-hand toolbar and click on Charts. Now for this data, I'm going to be adding a column chart. So I'm going to choose that column chart style, and you'll see the sample data appear in the Edit Chart pane off to the right. But since we already have data that lives somewhere, let's go ahead and click on Browse Files and find that data. And here's that spreadsheet right here, social media engagement data, and I'm going to open it up. And then it's going to ask me to select a sheet. This particular workbook has multiple worksheets. I've got all of the raw campaign data on one sheet, and I've already simplified the data and made my little calculations on Venngage import. So that is where I'm going to upload it. And when I click Upload, that data will appear down here. Now you might notice that some of that data gets a little cut off. If I want to expand this view, I can click the Expand button, and another window will display, showing all of the data from that worksheet. Now, I don't actually want to chart everything here. So if there is a column or a row of data you'd like to exclude, you can do that fairly easily from this view. I'm going to tap on that C column and then right-click and choose the option Remove Column. Same thing with the engagement rate. Right-click, Remove Column, and here's what I want to focus on: the campaign and just the total number of engagements. So now our chart updates automatically, and when we click back to our presentation slide, there is our chart. Now, it still uses some generic colors. If I want to brand this with my brand colors, there's a few different ways I can do that, but let's stick with the Edit Chart window. Going over to Setup, you'll see an option for chart style, and clicking on any one of these colors, you can choose a different project color or a different brand kit. Here I have several right here. I'm going to choose the Jealous Fork one and then start choosing some colors. And now I have selected all colors from our brand colors. Now let's talk about one of the biggest accessibility problems with charts: relying on color alone. If each campaign is represented only by a different color, the chart may not work for people with color vision differences. It may also be harder to read in grayscale, on a dim screen, or in a printed handout. If any colors of your brand are very similar to one another, you can always go in and choose a different color or a different shade. But the best way to distinguish each of these bars is to show patterns as well as that color. Scrolling down underneath this chart style area, you should see an option to show patterns. Clicking that button next to Show Patterns will apply patterns, different patterns, to each of the bars in your chart. I strongly recommend doing this for all of your charts. Next, I want to make sure all of the labels are very easy to read. Now, right now, they are a little smaller, and notice if I take my mouse and try to click on those labels, I can't select them. This isn't like PowerPoint or an Excel chart. You edit the chart all from one area, and that is this edit chart window. Scrolling down, you should see an area labeled labels. And from here, that's where you go to adjust the font that's used and the font size. 12 is a little bit small for an on-screen presentation, so I'm going to bump that up to 16. There's my labels. Now we can see very easily what each campaign is. You can do the same with your y-axis labels, and scrolling down even more, you have the option for those data labels. You can turn them on or off from here as well and bump up the size. And I'm definitely going to do that to make those labels even more visible. Now, some companies still prefer to include a legend with it. However, I like to direct label everything, so I usually leave my legend off. And above the labels area, let's click on axes. You'll see that we have the option to give the x-axis a title and the y-axis a title. I believe these names came in from the sample data that Venngage created, so you can remove these or change them into anything right from this area. In short, accessible chart design is really about removing friction. Since this is a wedding brand, I might be tempted to decorate the chart with hearts, rings, cameras, or flowers. A little personality is fine, but those elements should not compete with the data. So it's best to leave them off of your chart if they're decorative. Now, one final thing we need to do for this chart is to add alt text. So selecting this chart and going up to alt text, I could try the auto generate alt text. Sometimes it has a really good result. And here is what Venngage AI generated for this particular chart. Top engagement is venue glow up, steadily falling through to RSVP rescue. All campaigns show strong mid-range engagement, with Love Story launch second and Mood Board Monday trailing but still sizable. So that actually did a fairly good job summarizing the chart as a whole. If there's any one campaign I want to draw more attention to, I could add more information about that in here. But again, alternative text should describe what is displayed. And since every single campaign is styled in a way that doesn't draw attention to any one campaign, the alt text should reflect that. So I'm going to leave it just with what the AI generated for me. So one thing to remember is that the goal of chart alt text is to communicate the insights, not narrate the decoration. Now, before I finish, let's run the accessibility checker. So going up to File, all the way down to Accessibility, and I can choose the option Check Accessibility. From there, in my accessibility pane, I can click on the button Check My Design. And here is what that accessibility checker flagged: text size. Now keep in mind, this is flagging text size across the entire presentation. So clicking on text size will expand it and show all of the text that it might be difficult to read. So here, if I click that very first one, we have this www, it's the website for Jealous Fork Entertainment, and it's flagging that as too small. That is at 12 points. It says right here, larger text sizes may be easier for viewers with vision impairments to perceive. While there are no official accessibility guidelines for text size, we recommend using text sizes of at least 16 points. So this one is set at 12. Since this is just the URL for the company, it's not really all that important in terms of the presentation, especially since this presentation is for internal eyes. I'm going to leave that as is, but we can go through and scroll through the rest of this text. Like this one's set to 15, just bump it up to 16 and make space for it up there, and then that'll be fine. And again, just clicking through all of the rest. Like on this slide right here, this text is kind of important for what is being communicated, so I should probably bump that up a little higher. And likewise for everything else. And that does it for the auto checks. The rest, it's the manual checks. So we have alternative text for all of our charts. We have the use of color it's asking us to look through, text effects, gradients, images of text, links, all of that still needs to be fixed. But as for our actual chart data, I still need to ask myself, can someone understand this chart without seeing the colors? Are the labels readable? Does the alt text explain what the data means? Is the chart helping the reader make a decision? For Jealous Fork Entertainment, the final message is simple. Venue Glow Up generated the highest social media engagement, which suggests that transformation style wedding content may be especially effective for their audience. And that's what this visual chart should show. That is what the alt text should explain. And it still doesn't quite emphasize that. So that tells me I might need to spend a little bit more time tweaking this chart and the alt text to really show that. And that is the heart of accessible chart design in Venngage. First, choose the right chart for the kind of data, keep the data focused, make the labels readable, do not rely on color alone, use patterns, and write alt text that explains the meaning behind the data.